Welcome to the Law School Insider, where we have conversations with students, lawyers, and employers.
Succeeding in law school is something that you must prepare for, not only before you begin, but throughout your law school journey, and that's what this podcast is all about. I am your host, Dr. Christopher Lewis, and I will draw from my over 20 years of experience in the college admission field, as well as bring forth the experiences of others as we delve deeper into the issues. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Law School Insider. I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Lewis, and I'm so excited to be able to have you back again this week. This week, I am excited to bring you Leona Lewis, who is of counsel with Loop Legal, as well as runs a site called Comply Ethic. And, I actually was able to learn of Leona at a recent event that we both attended called Podcast Movement in Chicago, Illinois, where we were able to explore podcasting and be able to see some of the new things that are happening. But it's always great to be able to see how different people are using their legal degree in different ways. And Leona is definitely using that legal degree in a couple different ways. And I wanted her to be able to share some of that with you, share some of the successes that she's found, and be able to kind of delve a little deeper into the experiences that she's had. So, Leona, thanks so much for being with us this week.
Thanks, Chris. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it was a great conference. I was so excited to be able to get introduced to you, and I'm excited to be able to have you on today. I was exploring Comply Ethic a little bit, and I found it really interesting because compliance is definitely something that a lot of small businesses, they struggle with.
Right.
I mean, even as a entrepreneur or a solo entrepreneur, it's hard to understand compliance. Now, I'm sure that going through law school, you probably didn't have an idea that you wanted to be working in compliance issues, or maybe you did.
No.
But how did you go from being in law school down in Illinois to where you are today, starting this company, Comply Ethic, and focusing in on specifically compliance?
Well, yeah, you're right. I didn't have the vision of going into compliance when I was in law school. I've been an attorney for about 20 years now. And when I graduated from law school, compliance really was not a hot issue. It's a much bigger issue now than it was then. I moved from law school to the Twin Cities, where I now live, and worked in a couple of different firms as a litigator. Then I started working actually as a contract lawyer for a couple of years at Best Buy, the electronics retailer, in their headquarters here. And then they hired me on. So I was corporate counsel for them, doing mostly contract negotiations and working with their loyalty program. And then eventually also then working with their private label brand program, which is basically branding their own line of electronics. And once they started doing that, there were a lot of regulatory issues that needed to be addressed that I would say the company was not used to having to address. So that's where I got my start really in compliance, was there. And then after several years, the private label brand program quadrupled, and then I started rolling the program out to the rest of the company. And then I left the company a couple of years ago. And so really taking my experience there, not just, in being somebody who works in compliance, but actually setting up compliance programs that didn't exist in the past, like from scratch, to working with other businesses, mostly mid-sized businesses, who need help with these issues, but they don't have the budget or really the scale that justifies having somebody in-house doing that. So they need basically to rent somebody to help do that. And that's where I come in and Comply Ethic consulting as a compliance consultant. But I also am of counsel at a small a law firm that really focuses on startups called Loop Legal here in the Twin Cities. So going back to when I was a litigator, I think a lot of people out of law school start as litigators. And after about 4 years of that, I was ready to leave law all together. I was like, I was really unhappy. And it really wasn't until I started working in contract negotiations and more of the business side of law that I realized I just had the wrong job. There wasn't things about litigation in terms of the actual work that bothered me. It was the relationship you had with your clients, because it was just all bad news. It didn't matter whether you were winning or losing. Or it just was not good in their point of view. So that's a hard relationship to have with a business, is being their hired gun. That was not a role I really, flourished in. I did pretty well, but because I was doing like the motion practice and the strategy and producing the documents, that was great. But being the hired gun and that being all of my relationship to these businesses wasn't that much fun. So
how did you get past I know that you left the practice, but I'm sure that there was periods of time there when you were not happy, like you said. Mm-hmm. And there are going to be times in the lives of the people that are listening, right, that they're going to hit that roadblock. And they're going to hit that point in their career where they come to that impasse where they have to decide, do I stay, do I go?
Right.
And what were some of the things that were running through your head and some of the questions that you had to answer for yourself when you were trying to make that decision for yourself? What was running through your head?
I think what was running through my head at the time was I needed a different job in law. And then I started doing something else in law, which was negotiating and drafting contracts. And then I realized I was much happier doing that than I was and working in-house than I was working in a firm as a litigator. So that was just learning by experience. I definitely needed to leave what I was doing. I wasn't sure where I was going, but it really was basically trying out a new position and seeing how that worked. And it happened to work for me. Now it's more complicated because later in my career, of course, I worked in-house for 13 years and then left that and I'm going off on my own and trying to build a consulting business and build businesses as of counsel through this firm, and also just working on side projects with a lot of people. And it's a lot of fun. And secondly, I think right now, the legal profession is in a time of flexibility where people are trying new ideas and how to provide legal services to clients. I mean, traditionally, at least at the University of Illinois, but I think this is true with a lot of law schools, the law school education is really tailored to being a first-year associate in a litigation firm. And really the needs of clients who need legal services is far beyond that. It's really not that typical that they need litigators. They need both guidance and legal work, but they don't necessarily need litigators. And also the majority of businesses do not fall within businesses big enough to hire big law firms. 90 or some astronomical percentage of businesses in the United States are much smaller.
Now, what about, as you think back to your own law school experience, mm-hmm. I think a lot of law students think they need to niche down right in law school and they need to know where they're going to end up. And I hear students all the time saying that they think they know what they want to do, but then the next term they come back to me and they say, oh, I just took this other course and now I think I want to do this. And what have you learned as you've gone into your career? You left law school, you went into your career and you've done some different things. As you look back, what would you say to those students now about preparing themselves for the career that they want to go into?
I'd say that where you really is what you need to do is both in law school and when you graduate law school, look for people in the industry you admire and what they do, and see not only how they got there, but also, work for people you have a lot of respect for. That is how I got into the practice that I have now, is through the work I did, not through the study I did in law school. I mean, being a lawyer is all learning on the job. There's some fundamentals that you learn in law school, but really in terms of the actual practice or the specialty, it's going to be determined by the jobs that you have, the work that you have, not necessarily what you studied. Now, there's some isolated exceptions to this. One is patent law. That is actually a career path where technical people become lawyers to be patent lawyers. Occasionally, it helps to have studied, say, environmental law if you want to be an environmental lawyer, but that's not a foregone conclusion. I mean, I didn't study that much. I mean, I studied environmental law just the beginning classes, and I actually do a lot of environmental law now. So that isn't necessarily how things work. And then it's also just learning how to network within the legal community. I think you can start that right away as soon as you're in school. Learning about people, learning about firms and what they're like. You have a lot of access while you're in school, actually, to opportunities to meet people. And starting to build your professional network and building intelligence on opportunities you might want to pursue or decide not to. So I think that's what the important thing is. I think it's hard from a student's point of view. It's easy to think, well, I need to study this and then go forward. But I think what does not get emphasized enough is you normally get a lot of work and business opportunities through your other students who are actually there already, who you need to get to know, and also just through the legal community in the area that you're practicing in.
What would you say to a student that says, I want to get out there, I want to start networking, but I don't know anybody in the area that I'm going? Because so many students may not stay in their local community to go to law school. They might go to a brand new place. So, someone, let's say, moves from where I'm at in Michigan. They go out to the Twin Cities. They don't know anybody in the Twin Cities, except for you, of course.
Yeah.
And what would you say would be a good step for them to be able to try and break in, whether they know the area or not?
There are a few things to try. One is, the most obvious one is the local bar association, because they have a lot of functions and meetings and committees that they need people on, and they need people help run them. And it's a good place to meet people. And if you can, get involved in helping to actually organize them, because then you really do get to know the rest of the people on the committee. And also you get to know really well other people who you have honestly the excuse to talk to because you're setting up this big function. And that also works well in any kind of volunteer work that you do. Like, you can really be passionate about whatever you're passionate about, but you can also leverage the opportunity to get involved to be able to get to know other people who are working with you in this effort. That's actually a very good way to network, because what's hard to do is to network by just meeting people, but not really having an identified, you don't have something necessarily where you fit. It's like, it's different to say, hey, I'm on the committee to put on this event that we're at. It's nice to meet you. What do you think of this? Or if you're just saying, hey, I'm new in town, it honestly gives you something more to talk about with people and get their engagement with the activity you're involved in. And the other thing is that if you're going to a new community, and I have done this a couple of times in my life where I didn't know anyone, and I learned the second time from the mistakes I made the first time, that building both your professional network and your personal network, just your personal social life, takes work. It's a job. You really need to look at it as a job. And in some ways, if you're going into a new area, you don't know anybody, it is your first job, is to make sure that, especially your personal life is running well, because people fail often in their careers because of personal problems, not because of professional issues.
I definitely hear you about that. And networking is not always an easy thing.
No.
It does take time. It does take effort. And, even if you say to yourself that I'm not good at this, you still have to throw yourself
You still got to do it. And I can't say that I am not naturally good at it. I've become a lot better at it over the years because I had to get better at it. And I don't know too many other people who are just ducks to water in it with it either when it comes down to it. I mean, people look at especially other students in the law school, and you think, oh, those people are really good at networking and those other people aren't. But that's in the real world, that's not how it works out. I mean, everybody is good at building the network that's right for them. I mean, it's not, and there is a whole world of people out there that are different as well. They're not all the good networkers out there, and you're not. It's like, they're all like you. There's plenty of people exactly like you who are working hard to network. And the longer you get into your career, the more, I'd say right now in my career, if I can actually make meetings to people to specifically network. Like it's like, especially you get later in your career, people really understand and really depend on each other for networking more than I think maybe people realize in the beginning. They will overtly just say, we're networking here, unapologetically.
I understand
Yeah.
that. And I completely agree with you, because the thing is that a lot of times that when I talk to people about networking, they'll say to me, well, that's a, introvert extrovert thing. And I said, no, 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 no. No. That has nothing to do with introvert or extrovert. It's in this profession, you have to be able to know whether it's a colleague, whether it's a client.
Yeah.
You have to be able to insert yourself in there and have the confidence in yourself to be able to step forward and be able to be seen as an expert, but also be able to be seen as the person that they will want to interact with.
Right.
And whether you are an introvert, extrovert, does not matter. It means that you have to be able to understand yourself, understand how to talk to people, how to understand people, and how to listen.
Yes.
So that you can better be able to not only represent your clients,
right,
but also better be able to build those relationships with your colleagues,
right,
so that you can support them and they can support you in the future.
Right, exactly.
So
and
that's what
and there's lots of different techniques to use in networking. People think of networking as, being the life of the party, or going to a party and chatting with a whole bunch of people. But actually, you can set up for yourself one reason I have a podcast called Masters of Disaster, which I really enjoy doing. But one of the reasons I actually set it up was as a relationship building tool, because I had a reason to call just about anybody I was interested in talking to, and in fact, talking to them and maybe interviewing them on the podcast. So I get to know a lot of people that way. A lot of things that especially introverts, can get involved in. It's a little easier when you have a role. Like, it's not just being the life of the party, because if you're an introvert, you're never going to normally just suddenly want to be the center of attention in a party situation. But there's a lot of roles to play that need people to help them, and being able to work on like volunteer projects with other people, you get to form very solid relationships with them doing that.
Well, this has been great. I really appreciated you being on. Before we leave today, one of the things that I always like to end with is just saying to you, are there any other pieces of advice, tips, resources, things that you might say to someone that's listening today about finding success, not only in law school, but in their career? Mm-hmm. Is there anything else that you'd like to share?
I think one thing I want to share is that, especially these days, I don't know what it is with what the status is with people. I mean, people who are just coming out of law school now certainly have a longer history with technology than a lot of the lawyers who may be generations ahead of them. But if there is a way to make your life easier with technology as a lawyer, or make things simpler for your clients and being very client focused, always keep that in mind and do it. Because I'd say that one strange shortcoming of the legal profession as a whole is that they're so behind business culture when it comes to how things get done, that it's very annoying for the clients. So, take every opportunity to learn new things in not just your expertise, but how the work gets actually done. Because frankly, some people become extremely successful only by that reason. It isn't necessarily they're smarter. They're just able to just get a lot done and make their clients happy because of how they get it done. So I guess keep that in mind. The other thing is that, the legal market for entering lawyers is, I think, a difficult thing that I actually don't have a lot of information on. But you need to be creative on how to use your skills and how they match up with the market. That may be being a lawyer, and that may not be being a lawyer. People have a lot of respect for people getting legal education, but they often use them in a variety of roles that aren't labeled lawyer. So keep an open mind about that, because there are a lot of people in business who don't have the title of lawyer, who are formerly lawyers, who are much more successful than people with the title lawyer. So there are a lot of opportunities out there.
Well, that's great advice, and I really appreciate you sharing that and for you being on the show this week. Where can people best find you if they want to learn more about you and what you're doing?
Well, the best way to get to me is through email at Leona Lewis, LeonaLewis, at complyethic, ComplyEthic, or my phone at 612-695-8890.
Well, we just spoke a lot about networking, and Leona just gave you a great opportunity to be able to network with her. So no matter where you are, if you want to start that networking journey, Leona just gave you an opportunity to be able to connect. And I encourage you to take advantage of that. So Leona, thanks so much for being on the show this week. I wish you all the best and look forward to hearing about your success in the future.
Thanks, Chris.
Well, that was another great guest this week on the Law School Insider. If you have an interest in being a guest on the show, drop me an email at lawschoolinsider@cooley.edu. And thank you all for listening today. And remember, you have the ability and right to take control of your law school's success. I hope you'll continue listening, creating a plan for success that will prepare you to achieve the dreams that you have set for yourself. Talk to you next time. Thanks for listening. You're on your way to being a law school insider. Please subscribe to stay connected and come back again next time as we speak to more students, lawyers, and employers.